let's take a moment to really bring our attention here to this moment. Here's John. So just try to go inward for a moment and bring your awareness to this body sitting here. Notice what sensations it's experiencing, perhaps pressure from the chair. Perhaps the temperature in the room. Perhaps it's hearing sounds. Perhaps you just had dinner and so you can still taste dinner in your mouth. And then bring your mental attention to the sensation of the breath going in and out of the body. Perhaps even take a few deep breaths and settle into the body. And bring the reason why you showed up this evening to mind. What is your purpose this evening? What is your intention? So you might think something like that you've showed up to become more familiar with how to prepare the mind for death, for that inevitable moment that we all face, so that at the time of death, we can have a peaceful, calm, positive mind. We can think of benefiting others even at that moment. Setting up the condition to have a positive rebirth. And we do this not just to benefit ourselves, but so that we can keep working to benefit others. Let's recite the four immeasurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. And may all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So does anybody have any questions about the reading or what we did last week or anything at all?
Yes, it's not so much a question. I'm sorry, my dining room table, I have piles for each class that I'm doing, and it's hard to find everything. So on the how to extract the essence from your optimum human rebirth, the drawbacks of not remembering death. And the first one, that you will not remember the Dharma. That one is, I find that challenging in the teachings when, you know, we're told you may have already had calm abiding at this point, or you may have had certain realizations, but then to forget them, that's frustrating to me. I guess it doesn't matter that it's frustrating to me, but I find that like, you know, we're talking about enthusiasm in Bodhisattva's way of life right now, and that dampers my enthusiasm, shall we say.
Well, of course, this isn't talking about if we don't remember in death and impermanence, that's the cause of us not remembering what we learned in past lives. It's not saying that. It's saying that if we don't remember death and impermanence, we won't practice well in this life. So that we...
Wait a minute. Let me... Okay, well, I'll look this over and then get back to you.
You know, I can see how that would be disheartening if that was the fear. Somebody's not muted. Okay.
Yeah,
Faye, did you have a question?
It's showing muted on the computer.
Yeah,
all right, my computer is telling me my connection is unstable. Okay, I need everybody to turn off your video.
Breaking up again. It's starting to go up.
Turn off what?
There's probably a lot of Dharma classes starting up now. No, other Dharma classes.
Beata's in the waiting room. I don't know why this is happening, because it's not happening in any other circumstances. So, but that's our karma. Nicole?
I can hear you well.
So Nicole, have you updated the Zoom from your computer? Because you're the host. I updated mine after what happened on Tuesday. So I don't know. Nicole, have you updated your Zoom recently? There's updates, or there have been.
Days ago. So I think it should be good from my end.
Well, maybe if you would make someone else host, and then stop your video.
Okay, you and Rebecca are co-hosts, so.
Okay, we'll try that. I decided to be an eclipse. So Robert and Tali, can you stop your video? Because I really have unstable. We'll
It
see
says,
how it goes.
Venerable Tendron, it says on my computer, Tendron's network bandwidth is low.
Yeah, I don't know why.
So,
Of course,
okay.
That says
yeah,
Rebecca.
this is the only time it's. Well, now I've lost everybody.
That's because all the videos are off now.
No,
Venerable
that's
Tendron.
just because all of the, yeah, that's all. All the videos are off, and it may be your internet
it's because-
provider. You may have, they may have. Okay. Or it may be
So
that there
remove
are a
me
lot
as
of people
host.
using the Zoom
Don't keep
network
me as
right
host.
now.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen to me at any other time. I've been on this already today. So it's just interesting. Okay. But take me off as host since I have
You're off. You are off.
internet. Okay, thanks. All right. So everybody can see my screen.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Okay, Faye, were you getting ready to ask a question?
Yeah. It was just about there was like a sentence saying like whether we're practicing like charity, meditation, or the Dharma or whatever, it would be poisoned by attachment and aversion. So I was just surprised that it could, and I was wondering like how it could.
Well, because attachment and aversion, if we have those states of mind, in other words, say we want to do something for someone, but it's being influenced by our attachment to that person or attachment to the outcome. You know, it's sort of like our old joke about politicians, you know, going around, you know, shaking hands and kissing babies, even though they don't like babies and, you know, they really don't like the people they're shaking hands with, but they're doing it in order to be able to be elected to serve, do a public service, but, you know, it's being contaminated by their attachment to their desire to win the election.
What about attachment to the person? Like, how does that work? Like, what
Okay, so attachment is distinguished from love.
Okay.
In Buddhist jargon. Attachment is a state of mind that exaggerates the good qualities of something, desires it, and feels that, you know, without it, they won't be happy. So there's a, you know, we're taking our preference for someone or something and blowing it up out of proportion, and perhaps not even accurately at all, not just blowing up what is true, but perhaps not even, you know, it may not even be true, the foundation for our exaggeration. So, you know, and that influences how we act around them.
Okay.
Whereas love is just the wish that someone be happy, and it has nothing to do with you. So if someone will be happy, you know, being with someone else, you're happy with that because you want them to be happy. It's not contingent upon you getting what you want. Attachment's all about getting what you want, seeing something as desirable, and then,
Okay.
doing things to get it.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. And of course, aversion, when we do things because to avoid something we don't like, it's the same kind of thing. It's like compassion is this wish that people be free of suffering, and we're hoping to develop our minds to the point where we can have compassion for every sentient being. But that, so if we make it contingent upon whether we like them or not, approve of them or not, think that they're nice people or not, then that contaminates our actions, even our actions of compassion towards those we like, because it's not, it's really being influenced by our own, what's in it for us.
I see.
Any other questions?
Hello.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So I started doing the reading, and I see this stuff about how many minutes until you switch. I get thrown off about this. I guess what do you call it? Buddha jogging, I guess would it be called? I mean, the attachment, everything it makes a lot of sense to me. But so basically, how do you? I'm not asking you to explain it, like how it works or how to prove that. None of that. But like, how do you get past that? Because to me, like when Rebecca was just saying, I lost. Like I saw that and I just like kind of was like, okay, well, I saw the thing about the how many minutes to go into another body and demigods and all this stuff. I was like, okay, I need to put this down for now. But I don't want to. I enjoy the talk about the attachment. Everything you say always, I really get a lot out of it. It's just when I saw that. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
No.
Okay. In the reading, right, in the very beginning, it was saying like how many minutes until you have time to get into another body when you pass, and then if that doesn't work, you go on another level, and it was almost like religion to me in a way. And
It is religion. No, it's describing. Okay, so the point is, of course, when you read this stuff, there's going to be a lot that first you don't understand, and there's also going to be a lot that you just kind of go, I don't know about that, and basically the advice is to put those kinds of things on the shelf, because you probably don't know enough to understand what it's saying, and it's not like it's required to believe it. It's really just about, what the Buddha did was describe what he saw when his ignorance was removed or eliminated. So an enlightened mind has no boundaries. So an enlightened mind sees everything that's going on, can see all the results of all of our actions, sees all sentient beings at all the same time, because it doesn't have any boundaries. It's everywhere. So that right there is kind of hard to get our heads around. So it's just about, really trying to keep our minds open. In other words, we don't want to shut doors, because then we'll never look at it. We'll never try to understand what the teachings are saying about that, And there isn't, I don't know, you'd have to tell me what page it's on, and I'd have to look at it. This thing about time, I'm not understanding exactly what the text was saying, but mostly it's just at this time you're exploring, and you're just reading a lot of different things. And so we just, it's just about kind of going, okay, don't know about that, put that on the shelf, check that later. Does that make sense?
Oh yes, definitely. I didn't want to say anything because like I'm not trying to like come in here like and be well, this doesn't make sense, like prove. No, I don't want to be like that. But I really enjoy like this whole thing from the day I walked in. This makes a lot of sense to me. A lot. I mean, it's.
And then that's even more reason for you to put those things on the shelf that at this point you don't understand.
Right. Okay. And actually, that was in the very beginning. I think it was from this thing. It's like I think it was from the Dalai Lama or something. I was like, okay, who am I to criticize the Dalai Lama? But I wasn't criticizing him. You know what I mean? It was just like This is kind of out there for me. Not out there. I don't mean to be sound disrespectful, but I don't mean it that way at all. I don't know how to put it. You understand
Well,
what I'm
it's
saying?
completely a different worldview, you know?
Yes.
So it's, you know, and that's the thing. Buddhism doesn't just describe parts of how things work. It explains how everything works. And maybe all religions do that. But it's not about faith, just, okay, this is a mystery, so you have to believe it. You know, so you just kind of, you know, it's more that you just someday, if the teachings are correct, let's put it this way, if the Buddhist teachings are correct, and we do the practices and develop our realizations and our wisdom, we will eventually be able to know what is true and what isn't. So it will not just be reading someone else's words or just reading the teachings of the Buddha. We'll have experience that confirms it.
Okay, yes.
But that's not yet, yeah, you know.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
No worries.
Venerable Tendron,
Yeah.
I was going to say, when I was starting, I found your explanation of those 4 levels of, I think, doubt or understanding quite helpful, where it goes from wrong view to doubt, tending towards wrong view, doubt, you know, tending towards right view.
Okay. So that's the, comes from the describing the 7 types of awarenesses. And so according to the teachings, where we all start is with wrong view. We have the wrong idea of how things exist. And then as we study and we, you know, try to learn more, we might move to doubt. And there are 3 types of doubt. There's, you know, equal doubt, where we, you know, maybe, maybe not, don't know. Or there's the doubt that tends towards wrong view, where we're still holding on. You know, so like in Buddhism, we don't teach that there's a creator God. So in Buddhism, we'd say that's wrong view, that there's a, you know, that there's a creator God that created everything. You know, now in someone else's tradition, our view is wrong view. But in you know, so then maybe you say, you know, that you say you can have you're still clinging to that idea. So you're kind of staying closer to wrong view. But then you might also have doubt that's leaning towards correct view. You know, so you're thinking, well, yeah, I kind of trust the scientist on this, and I think there was the Big Bang, and I don't think someone created the Big Bang. I think it, you know, it's just, you know, the law of matter. And what that can lead to is a correct assumption, where you're just assuming it's true because you're not an expert, so you're relying on others, you know, but you might not necessarily have correct reasoning for it. But eventually, as you reflect, learn more, meditate, and have more realizations, you know, you will come to know what is correct. And this is what the Buddha's describing, is what he came to know. So he's not in control of anything. He doesn't make any decisions. He just, you know, uncovered how things actually work. And then his teachings are from that perspective. Now, we have to do the same process as the Buddha did. The Buddha started just like us, an ordinary being, and had to, you know, develop his mind, transform his mind, be able to penetrate the misperceptions we have and correct them. Is that sort of it, John?
Sorry,
Yes,
was
that was. Oh, I was going to say, yeah, that was what I was thinking of. And I kind of liked it because I guess I always thought that sometimes doubt can be used to kind of propel you forward in knowledge and wisdom sometimes.
And my teacher always said, from confusion comes wisdom.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you didn't mishear that. Yeah. So it's this idea that we want to investigate our current beliefs, you know, whatever we're holding to be true or not true now. We don't want to just leave it like that. We want to, you know, kind of look into it, you know, and then perhaps we end up with, I don't know how things exist. You know, so it's just this process of investigation, being confused, sorting it out, then being confused again. I mean, you know, I can't tell you how many times you think, you know, I've done this and I'm kind of gone, oh, I've got this now, you know, and then a year later, I'm reading the same text. I'm going, what was I thinking? You know, I mean, it's a process of, and, you know, that's what we need to do. We don't want to take someone else's word for it. We want to find what we see is true. Faye, did you ask a question?
Yeah, I was just curious, like, when you were talking about that, is there a class before this or something? I was just wondering.
Yeah, it's called Mind and Its Potential. So, you know, so it's and then there's a basic program class called Mind and Mental Factors. So yeah, there are classes on this. And you might find the book by Geshe-Tashi Sering called Buddhist Psychology.
Okay.
Written, it's part of the Foundation of Buddhist Thought series.
Oh, okay. Is it part of the is it the virtual book club? Or I guess I'll ask Rebecca or Nicole about it.
Yeah, or just Google it.
Okay.
I think she means right before this class, but I was talking about like months and a year ago. I remember that teaching.
Yeah, it's from Mind and Its Potential. It's talking about the different states of mind and awareness. And I can bring it, and you know me, I could have brought it up in any class.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Rinpoche emphasizes practicing the good heart, really cultivating our loving kindness, our compassion, the bodhicitta mind, the mind that wants to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. If we don't cultivate these minds, expand our level of, you know, loving kindness and compassion, then the delusions, the attachment, anger, aversion, our ignorance, you know, just we don't have anything to take its place. And so it's still, if we're still under the control of those things, it's not going to serve us well in our life, nor at the time of death. So the advice that, you know, like basically for having a good mind at the time of death, the kind of mind that's a condition to have a good rebirth, is to practice Dharma throughout your life. And then this is, you know, the practicing the 5 powers during your life is sort of like a shorthand list of what to focus on. There are also 5 powers at the time of death, which are the same powers, but they're explained a little differently and they're in a different order. So the power of intention, sometimes you'll see it called the power of planning or the power of our motivation or attitude. And, you know, we talk about this all the time. We want to constantly check our motivation to ensure that it's as vast as possible. You know, so this is when, you know, like when we hear about someone's struggles and compassion arises, then we try to expand it, you know, to, you know, kind of include everybody who's suffering in this way, because it's not just one person who has these issues, you know, just, you know, it's not just your friend, it's many beings. It's not just the person on the news, it's lots of other beings have the same suffering. So we're trying to always kind of, you know, increase our capacity for equanimity towards all beings. And equanimity doesn't mean feeling neutral towards all beings. It's actually understanding they're all in the same boat as we are. They're stuck in samsara, and because samsara is the nature of suffering, they are going to be struggling, and they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what the causes of happiness are. So we want to learn how to have those causes for happiness. And one way is to try to develop the habit of doing everything with the best motivation and the most expansive motivation that we can. And this just starts by being, aware. We wake up in the morning, we set a motivation for the day, where we think of our loved ones, and then we just, we gradually expand that circle of concern outward, so that our, goal is to develop our good heart, our loving kindness, that we want to, do no harm. Oh, by the way, I have the participants list open, so I will be able to see raised hands if that is useful, I think, just to let you know. So when we're setting our intention, we need to be careful about, what is this? Set the intention to be really careful for however many seconds there are from now until the time of death, to be able to recognize the signs at the time of death and immediately and easily think these thoughts depends on having practiced every day, and especially so when you're sick. So this is about practicing this power of the intention at the time of death. And and of course, if we practice it now before the time of death, make it a habit, it will naturally be there at the time of death. So so when we become familiar with the signs at the time of death, we'll be ready to focus on positive intentions with an expansive view. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Then we have the power of training or acquaintance or familiarity. So this again, it's sort of this again develops a habit. So we want to have the habit of setting an intention, and we want to do it consistently enough, often enough, so that it becomes just what we do. And Rinpoche likes to emphasize this idea of training ourselves with the mind of bodhicitta, where we just, whenever we're getting ready to do an activity, that part of what informs that activity, our decision to do the activity, is this, idea of, may I do this with a mind that will lead me closer to enlightenment. And this can be done with just about every activity we do. It doesn't it's not just, when we sit down and meditate. We can use this attitude when we go to work, when we walk through doors, when we go, not through doors, when we open a door. So, we can really think, may I be leading all sentient beings to enlightenment. Now, we might not start with that kind of thought, but it's more of just really having this attitude that we are interconnected with all sentient beings. So if we, I used to pause outside of my room at Plum Village. I had 7 roommates. And so I'd pause outside the door, and think to myself, okay, let me enter this room, with a mind of peace and loving kindness. This is how we can develop this habit of recognizing that our presence has an impact on others. And this will help us at the time of death if we start thinking about, instead of being, clinging to this life, we think about, trying to remember that we want to have a good rebirth in order to be able to continue our work to benefit others. Then there's the power of the white seed. This is the accumulation of merit during our lifetime by creating positive karma and purifying negative karma. So getting in the habit of like daily purification practice, which can be, simply at the end of the day, really looking back on your day and thinking about, if there was any harm that you did, and, having genuine regret for the harm that you did. Make a decision to try to remedy it by apologizing, by doing something else to remind you that you don't want to act that way, and in the future. Really set the resolve to work harder. But so we just want to be able to very gently look at our day at the end of the day and see the mistakes we made, and own them, acknowledge them, take responsibility for them. Really try to feel the hurt or harm that we cause. It could be to ourselves or to others. And then at the time of death, it's good to try to give away everything before you actually die. So you're actually creating that generosity karma, in this lifetime, because that can ripen as resources for your next lifetime. And particularly anything that causes you attachment. So you're not surrounded by things you're attached to that will catch your heart, hook you, into wanting to stay when that's not possible. And then practicing the power of blaming the self-centered mind, sometimes called the power of destruction. What we want to understand is we don't need to blame ourselves. The self is just, this convenient label on top of a whole, a series of moments of body and mind since beginningless time. That's not the problem. The problem is our habit of self-centeredness, our habit of grasping at the self. That mind is the problem. And because that influences our actions, it is what's giving rise to our suffering in the future. So we really want to get familiar with this. We really want to have an understanding how our grasping in ourselves, how our desire to get what we want, our desire to not get what we don't want, how that is the energy that the mental energy that pushes us towards all kinds of activities that have negative results. It pushes greed. It pushes us into having relationships with people who are, we divide people. We actually, get in, we cause harmonious relationships to break apart. We will cheat others in order to get promotions, or in order to just get what we want. We'll kind of break in line to be able to get our popcorn first at the movie theater. Although I guess we won't be doing that for a while. So really becoming convinced of this, that every undesirable thing that we experience is due to this self-centered attitude. And so we use blame on it. I mean, that's just one word choice to kind of, kill it. So every time that it arises, we understand that this is not in our this will not get us where we want to go. And so we want to interrupt it and bring our wisdom to the situation and not just follow our desire. Yes, Faye.
Earlier you were talking about giving away or letting go of whatever the things are that's hooking us to stay. But like, what if it's people? Like, what if there's some, they don't want to diet because maybe they want to, watch certain people grow or whatever. Like, is that?
Well, but yeah, the key here is that you can't. This is at the time of death. Okay, so we want to get so familiar with the reality that at some point we must let go. And so in the Buddhist tradition, it's advised that we ask our friends and our loved ones to, when they get upset, when they're starting to feel the loss and they're, to, leave the room so that it doesn't tug at our heart. Because we have to leave. So it's really a practice of recognizing that it doesn't benefit us to hang on when there's nothing, nothing we can do. And it harms us to hang on because that attachment is not love. That attachment is this desire of getting what you want. And sometimes we can't get what we want. At the time of death, we can't get what we want. We can't hold on to the life of this body. And so the mind that wants to is a disturbed mind. It's a suffering mind. It's a craving mind for something that it can't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just sad to hear. But yeah, I get it.
It seems sad to hear, but it's actually, we want to really look at that. Why is it sad when it's realistic? The truth is, we're all going to die. And we don't have control over when that happens. So being able to accept the reality of that will allow us to be more peaceful, and really spend those last moments with our loved ones in a way that is not just so sad that you're having to leave them, but instead you can think about their futures and know that, you've done the best you can. You hope that they will be well and happy. You know that they will experience the loss, but that's not all you hope for them.
True. Yeah. I guess when like doctors, people say, oh, you gotta for those who have, for example, terminal illnesses, and doctors and people say, oh, you gotta fight. And I guess that isn't really helping then.
No, you can fight. I mean, it doesn't say, oh, as soon as you get sick, pray that you die. That's not it. It's just that there is a point of no return. And being able to accept that, recognizing that that time is here, and having, not clinging to the life we're losing. We have to really, this is one of those minds we want to start to get really familiar with, really recognize when we're holding on to something as if it could be permanent and stay, how that is suffering. How that there's a discontent, there's an energy in that kind of mind that is very unpleasant. So that we can, allow our mind to settle down with acceptance, because it's going to happen. Jack, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, but I was kind of reconsidering whether I wanted to ask this or not. I don't know if it's going to sound weird, but and I know I won't have any much control.
You don't need
over
all
it.
this disclaimer stuff.
I'm
Just
kind
go
of
for it.
yeah. I'm kind of. Is it odd to hope that when I die, I'm by myself and alone?
Yeah, that's what a lot of Buddhist practitioners hope for.
Okay. Okay.
Because they know
Sounded
it's going to
weird,
be hard
yeah.
for them. So that's one of those things that you can kind of, protect yourself, but only within a certain extent, because of course, we also have to think about others. It's like, it sounds good. Venerable Roger used to say, this has been Rinpoche's, he's the chairman of FPMT, and he's been traveling with Rinpoche for 40 years. He says, he always says, that, oh, I just want to be in a retreat cabin somewhere, and all alone and da-da-da-da-da. That's, and everybody, all the people who work in the health field always raise their hands and say, yeah, but that might not happen. You may end up in a hospital. You may, without it being your choice, really, So we need to understand that these things are not necessarily under our control. And just like Shanti Davis says, if we can't change it, why worry? Because worrying about it is an unpeaceful state of mind. And what we're trying to do to prepare for the time of death is to learn how to be able to have a peaceful mind in spite of what's happening. So figuring out a way. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to be alone.
Well, you have to do the work.
I don't want to.
It always comes down to, it's not magic. It's not about controlling external circumstances, although those can help. Our conditions can help, and we can certainly request certain things, but we also have to accept we might not get what we want. And so we want to work. So we want to work at practicing a mind that can tolerate that moment that is inevitable. So I'm going to go to, let's see. Any other questions before we do a meditation? If I can find it again. Rebecca, did you find your question? More specific.
No, it's okay, Venerable Tendron. I'll write it down for next time. I've got several notebooks going. Thanks.
Okay. Sorry, folks, I can't find the one I want to use.
Then I'll just take this time to mention that after the teaching, everyone should have the latest meditation and sort of homework email in their inbox. I'll be sending that out before the end of class, or by the end of class.
Okay, here it is. All right, so let's kind of sit up. And so what we're going to do is be meditating on the changes that the body will undergo. on what's going to happen, definitely. It might be very fast, it might be very slow, but we're all going to die. And so what we're going to do is visualize as if it's happening right now, as if you're in that situation right now. And what we want to, when we become familiar with this kind of practice, if we do it regularly, we will really feel like as if, oh no, it's happening now. We'll actually have those, that our heart rate might rise, our breath might get very shallow. And because we're trying to have an experience of our impermanence. And so Rinpoche says it's important to keep trying to practice such a meditation like this until we actually have those signs, till we really get it. Because and this is what we're talking about when we say, as we're doing meditations, if we have an experience of something really resonates in a much deeper way, we want to stop the discursive thought and just experience, stay in that experience, not distract us by continuing the reflection. Because if it's just words, it's not going to impact us in the way that the experience of the words can do. And this just comes from getting familiar with it, doing it more often. So the feeling gets stronger and stronger the more we meditate on impermanence, the more we meditate on the shortness of this life, and the fact that in every moment we get closer to the time of death. So take a moment to kind of settle into your seat. Take a few deep breaths. And try to imagine that you've just gotten back from the doctor's office and the doctor said, oh, one of your test results is not good. So we're going to do some more tests to see what's going on. So try to picture that. Perhaps you have a relationship with a doctor, so you can picture that person. Or perhaps you've just gotten an email from your doctor's office asking you to come back in to talk to the doctor about your results. Now imagine it's later that day or that evening, and with your family and friends, all laughing and smiling and enjoying each other's company. But soon the time will come when they'll be weeping at the news of your death. So imagine thinking that. Imagine the evening that you find out that something may be terribly wrong with your body. And think how this body, which has always enjoyed food and drink, will soon be unable to swallow anything at all, even the drops of medicine put into my mouth. Think, at that time, I'll be completely unable to move my body or open my mouth. All I'll be able to do will be with great difficulty to even open an eye. Doesn't matter how much my family or friends try to encourage me, I still will not be able to do more than open an eye. Soon after that, I won't even be able to hear anything they say. This body, which is always talking about everything, will soon be dead, unable to talk about anything. This body, which at the present time has the ability to express all its desires, will soon be unable to see or even explain any desire. Really try to imagine just lying on a bed, unable to move, unable to swallow. The hearing is failing. The ability to speak is failing. This body, which I've always tried to keep well, to keep attractive, will soon become a frightening corpse. Even the people who are presently attached to my body, who love me, will soon be terrified, afraid to even look at it, let alone touch it. Think, soon this body will be called a corpse. Nobody will want to touch me. All they'll want to do is to drag it away by the tiniest corner of the clothes that they can reach, trying to avoid touching the body at any reason. Soon this body that I have always dressed so well will be completely naked, lying on a slab. It's uncertain when these things will happen, but it won't be long. It could be tonight, this month, this year. Whenever it is going to happen, I am constantly getting closer to that time, approaching it day by day. Right now, my body can't bear being touched by even a tiny stick of burning incense. But soon it will be cremated in a fire and be ash, or be nailed into a box and buried underground, full of worms eating it. Through the efforts of meditating in this way, reflecting on the time of death, may we no longer want to engage in meaningless actions, no longer want to do any actions that only have to do with this present body. May I develop the mind that only works towards enlightenment, to be able to bring all sentient beings out of suffering. So now just take a moment to reflect on how meditating in this way, how thinking about these things can inform your life. How can it be useful, not just a depressing exercise? Allow yourself to check in with your body, aware of the sensations of the body. And when you're ready, just return to the group. Who can share, what does doing this, how does this strike you? Somebody's got their hand. Yes, Veronica or Robert.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the word, it's brutal and it's hard, but I'm just amazed more people don't do, I mean, it's going to happen to all of us. It's just very, very, it's going to happen. That's just true. It's the hard, it's brutally honest, I guess. And I'm just curious why more of us in society, I don't know if it's our culture don't focus on this, but it is weird. One thought that jumped up was like, wait, I need to fix what I'm fixing here. Everything I'm working on here, in the end, I mean, that's it. It's time. There is no more time to fix. There is no wait. So I that was interesting. That thought came into my mind.
And that's what we do. So that's a very good observation, is that we there's a part of us that believe that death waits until our lists are completed, even though intellectually we know that's not true. But we hold tightly to that idea, and it's not useful. Because at the time of death, we don't want to be worried about what's left undone. There's always going to be something left undone. And it's the same way that, you know, like when someone needs our attention and we think, oh, but I need to just finish this task. You know, we really want to be able to pause and really decide what's more important. Sometimes it might be finishing the task, but sometimes it might be turning our attention towards the person that needs it. So it's about really being able to understand that we want to value each moment and make each of our moments meaningful, because this body will end. And at the, you know, and we'll go on to the next life. And unless we have great realizations, it's not that we start again. It's not like we have to start over from scratch. But all we can bring are our tendencies and habits with us. So we want really strong habits of wanting to, you know, make our lives meaningful. And that meaningful means that we find them satisfying. We feel content from day to day. And what the Buddha's been teaching us is that getting what we want actually doesn't satisfy us, that isn't the path to happiness. That's one of the mistakes we need. And it comes from grasping at this self, being attached to this self, the identification we have with this me that doesn't even exist. You know, from the time that we're, you know, born, we start creating this storyline, this idea that this is who I am. And then we try to make our lives serve that self, that me. And the Buddha is trying to help us understand that there is no such me. There's no self like that to serve. And in fact, it causes us to have the habit of chasing after things that result in suffering. Anything else arise? Faye?
Yeah. For me, yeah, it was really sad. Yeah, it was really sad imagining that whole thing. I felt the desires that I have are so unimportant. Like just imagining myself as a corpse, it almost feels almost ridiculous to have any things that we like want. I also had to face some fears. Like I had this fear that I can't communicate anymore. And imagining that I couldn't, in a way, helped me not fear it anymore. It's almost like it's inevitable it would happen.
Of course, it's inevitable that it would happen.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to freak us out. That's the key, is the more we can get familiar with the fact that it is going to happen, what it can help us see is that our attachment to this body that is going to fail us perhaps shouldn't be driving our life. So it's an opportunity for us to really start evaluating how we spend our time, or at least how we are thinking about our lives. So Katya asked, if the world doesn't really exist, it does exist. It just doesn't exist the way we experience it. And our self doesn't really exist. Our self does exist. It just doesn't exist the way it appears to us to exist. So the world's not a projection of our minds like a movie. I mean, you could use that as an analogy, but it is a result of our karma, of our past actions. So when you think about, does the world not exist after we leave? Your world doesn't exist. You know, it's like Tendron's world will come to an end. If I'm grasping at, you know, my life, my friends, my family, as if there's something permanent about that, that comes to an end. When I die, there is no me to do that. You know, there's that storyline ends. But my consciousness actually doesn't end. What ends is the story I've made up since birth that I identify so strongly with. That ends. And that's part of the process of understanding that our attachment to this body, you know, you think about how we can, you know, get obsessed with this body. So young people might get obsessed with it, thinking about trying to attract a partner. And so how they dress, you know, how they walk, what is their, you know, just everything about the external appearance is important. But of course, in the long term, how we look isn't going to stay the same. So we may attract a partner, but it's not enough that our body attracts them, because 10 years from that moment of attraction, you'll have aged, that body will have changed. So it's not enough to hold that relationship together. It's not enough to be satisfying. So we have to go beyond such a superficial method to try to be happy. So when we say that this self that we grasp onto doesn't exist, it is the story that we tell ourselves. The idea that somehow this self is permanent and it has a nature that is so special, and we need to grab onto it and never let go. And we want people to understand it and know who we are. This kind of story actually is something that's completely fabricated by our conceptions. You would never be able to search through all the moments of your life and find such a self. So we really want to look. Yes, of course, you know, the Buddha would say, yes, it is sad that, you know, eventually we lose everything we love, everything we care about, it will be gone. That's the suffering of samsara. And there's a way out so that we don't keep experiencing this birth and death, birth and death, birth and death of these very unsatisfying bodies of contaminated aggregates. They're contaminated with ignorance. They exist because we misunderstand how we exist. So they appear to us in this very gross form. We grasp after it. We think it's the most important thing to protect until we have, say, children to protect. And then it's my children are the most important thing. But it's just an extension of the I, the me, myself, and I. It's part of the mind. So we want to be able to understand that all sentient beings are stuck in this trap of uncontrolled death and rebirth. And it is of the nature of suffering. And that sadness when we experience loss, that is what we can end by developing our wisdom. It's not easy, and we have to keep challenging the way we hold things to exist. And part of that, one of the important practices to do is to really experience impermanence. And it's our own impermanence, because that's the last thing we grasp after, is this body. And our fear at the time of death is the fear that losing this body means there's nothing left. And the Buddha said, no, that's this all that's ended is this body, this storyline with that goes, that we've created around this body. But the consciousness continues, because we don't exist the way things appear to us. This is this takes, a lot of thought and reflection and study and more reflection and meditating on and, really observing ourselves in the way we think and recognizing when we're grasping at permanence, when we're thinking that, the most important thing is, this body, this person, whom I love with my life, until they do something where they become that person that we want to get away from. That everything's in flux. Robert.
Actually, it's Veronica.
Hi, Veronica.
I experience everything that everybody has shared, but especially when you said that we have to picture ourselves like looking scary and that nobody wanted to see us or touch us. Then at that point, my mind, I knew death was coming, but up to that point, I didn't want to kind of die, even though I knew it was inevitable. At that time, I said, you know what, I'm ready to leave, or I'm ready to die, because I don't want to, I was thinking about my daughter seeing me like that, and I didn't want her to continue seeing me like that. So I said, instead of, I'm ready, basically, I'm ready to die.
So we just want to be cautious. We want to recognize that when it's time, when the body's failing, if we happen to have a drawn out experience at the time of death, we get sick and there's a process and our body slowly fails, reaching that state of recognizing, okay, sooner rather than later, the time to let go will come. And there's absolutely nothing that I can do to extend my life, So it's really helpful to have the mind that's just able to let go. We don't have to hurry it up. It's sort of like, we don't want to have the mind that says, when I become old and unattractive, I'm just going to, take too much medicine. So I, it's like this idea that like getting old and decrepit is the worst thing that could happen. Well, that's just the body. If you can still use your mind, if you can still, be loving and generous and supportive to others, if you can share your wisdom with others, it doesn't matter if the body is, decrepit. So we don't want to develop revulsion over our body because it's no longer attractive. We want to understand that relying on happiness due to an attractive body is pointless.
Yes, I agree with you, but I think if I misunderstood, that there was a point in the meditation where we couldn't talk, we couldn't.
Right. Yeah, you're
couldn't
near death.
hear. I mean, under those situations, obviously, I wouldn't want my physical state to cause pain for my family. Not necessarily, because if I could have do something, I would have stayed. Not this, be ready to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just checking. So yes, I mean, that's good. This is the way we can start thinking about it. We can start recognizing that, that this body that we cling to so much, this life that we cling to so much, there's a point at which we have to let go. And we can either let go with a peaceful mind, or we can let go grasping at this life and be suffering, have a very suffering state of mind. And the more we can adjust to the reality, the more that we can start to accept that there are things out of our control, that our happiness does not depend upon having control. It depends on how we handle our response to what's happening. Then the more we can have a peaceful mind at the time of death, because it's going to be out of our control. That's what samsara is. It's uncontrolled death and rebirth. How else can working on this inform us? How can this help us? If we, why did the teachers say that we should do this kind of meditation every day until we really have an experience of our impermanence?
So that when we actually die, we've rehearsed for the best outcome.
Yeah, so we don't freak out. So we don't, that part of us that thinks, yeah, I know I need to practice, but I'll do that this weekend. Starts to understand that procrastination, this weekend it's sort of like, tomorrow never comes because it's always today. And if we're in the habit of procrastinating today, then we'll never get to it. So it's this, we really want to have, if we think, oh, well, I'll spend some quality time with my loved ones, when this project is finished, well, that time might never happen. So we want to really take this on as the fact of our lives, that this is part of the deal. And we want to be able to use it to motivate us to choose well. Does that make sense? So one of the practices is just to, as you're going to bed at night, so we'll be doing the dissolutions next week, about what actually happens in the body as it starts to fail. When we practice it as we're falling asleep, but we really want to, one of the things that I try to do is every time I hear about someone who's sick, I try to think someday that's going to be me. This could be me now. It's sort of like the coronavirus. One of the horrors of the coronavirus is that you can just have, you feel like you're just having the flu, you have these, and then suddenly you're breathing, your that you've developed some pneumonia in the lungs, you're not even aware of that happening, and suddenly you need to be rushed to the hospital, be on a ventilator, or get oxygen. And this is the reality of this body. It is fragile. So we need to understand that the more we can do to recognize we have no control of when this is going to happen, that we can take care of ourselves, we can exercise, eat right, go to the doctor, all those things, And that will benefit us because our bodies will feel better, all those things. But it can't prevent our death. Life is a terminal disease. Birth and death are they're inseparable. Now, the good news, according to the Buddhist teachings, is we can get out of this uncontrolled cycle of birth and death through developing our wisdom, through having a direct experience of how things exist, from not grasping at things that are impermanent as if they're permanent, at things as if they're, clean when they're unclean, grasping at desire as the method for happiness when it's actually the method that causes suffering. Where the mind of equanimity, the mind that has few desires, the mind that accepts what's going on when you can't change it, the mind that, changes things when you can, but understands that satisfaction, meaningfulness, this sense of, of spending your time well is an inner process. It is not dependent on what happens outside of us. So the Buddha said that, we really want to start being aware of how, this craving for gain, whatever kind of, financial success or status, all of those things, and our desire, our craving to be free from loss, our craving pleasure, and our craving the freedom from pain, our craving a good reputation around others, our craving to be free from disgrace, our craving praise, pleasing words said to us, our craving to be free from criticism. That when we really observe what's going on in our mind, the highs and the lows, pretty much we're being driven by these 8 worldly concerns. These pairs. We're either seeking gain, pleasure, fame, praise, and avoiding loss, pain, disgrace, and criticism. So we want to, really check this out by checking in with our minds, especially when we're feeling disappointed or elated, the roller coaster moods that we have. And to look at what is driving that experience. Is because we've gained something? Has someone praised us? Have we lost something? And so we've gone down to the valley of, of that roller coaster. Because this is all about grasping at what we want, grasping to avoid what we don't want, trying to control what's external to us, and thinking because we think happiness is there. Yes, Robert or Veronica.
Hi, I'm sorry. Do you know how you use that example about the cake that, we find ourselves sometimes, instead of enjoying it, we're thinking about, oh, how am I going to get more of this instead of focusing on what we have?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. But now put that in context, like if you're going to that makes sense. But if you're going to why would you settle to actually make a whole, spend 2 hours making a cake when it's only going to drip for 15 minutes? And the reason I ask that is, in the end, what's the, I mean, we have to live this life, but what's the point of striving so hard like we do in this world? In the end, I mean, for what? I mean, it's going to be
That's
gone.
what the Buddha's asking us.
Oh, yeah.
Is that right now, what we're striving for will not bring us lasting happiness.
Then how do we
We
live?
have a tendency to strive for more of whatever we like, whether it's, money to buy the things we like, the money to buy a house in a gated community so we feel safe, money to send our kids to the best schools, all of those, so we strive for things. This doesn't mean there's anything wrong with taking care of ourselves and our families. It's just that we need to understand that, first of all, whether we get those things or not doesn't have to determine whether we're content or not, whether we feel at peace or not, whether we feel like we're having a meaningful life or not. Like a lot of people feel, I know in my parents' generation, men often, really felt like failures if they did not provide to a certain level for their families. It's like, oh, well, I've wasted, that they're failures. And so this is what we want to start looking at. What's driving us? So yes, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to provide the requisites for ourselves. If we've taken on the responsibility of children and partners, we need to, be part of that community and take care of each other. We have responsibilities to each other and commitments to each other. But it doesn't mean we really want to check up and make sure we're not sacrificing what really are the causes for happiness for really mundane goals that there's no guarantee of. If you spend all your time working, doesn't mean you'll be successful. It does mean your relationships will suffer. Or maybe you won't have any. So you want to think about that. Okay, at the time of my death, am I going to be glad that I worked so hard all the time and have no relationships? So this is one of those ways thinking about the time of death can start helping us make better decisions about how we spend our time. Because what we do matters. It just doesn't matter in the way we've been training ourselves. We have we feed our craving for these things. That's why we're in the desire realm, according to the Buddha. And what he's trying to help us understand in these teachings is that, this body's going to fail us. We are going to lose all our relationships. So what is it that will, and that what causes happiness is how we think, how we speak, and what actions we do with our body. So we really want to investigate, whether we're being driven by things that can't guarantee happiness. You can't prevent loss. It's like when you think about your children, and you try to think, you have to accept at some point that you cannot protect your children from everything. It's not under our control. But being able to help them learn how to, be okay when loss occurs, okay when pain occurs, okay if they don't get the goal of whatever they're doing, that there's there's satisfaction in the effort put forth, that there's satisfaction, that we don't have to get all caught up in praise and criticism We need to develop our inner wisdom to decide, well, could we have done that? Could we have worked a little harder? And if we say, yeah, probably could have done that, then we self-assess. So it's about learning how to, not be at the beck and call of external people and things, circumstances, that determines whether we have peace of mind or whether we come from within. Before I ask Faye what she has, does, someone who hadn't spoken yet, anybody have any thoughts they want to share or questions? Okay, Faye, you're up.
I mentioned earlier how I have this fear that, I can no longer communicate anymore when I'm at that stage. And should I be thinking like, it's still worth living even at that stage? And what would make life worth living even when we can't communicate anymore?
No, I mean, it's not about what should I be doing. It's more of understanding that this time will come, okay? Everybody loses their life, okay? So if one of your fears is when you look at that and you go, oh, I can't imagine not being able to communicate. Well, okay, so maybe what you would like to do is go ahead and think about, if there's something you think you'll want to communicate, maybe you need to do it now. If you don't tell the people you care about that you care about them often enough.
It's more.
We don't want to encourage our clinging to relationships, our clinging to, as if things don't change. We want to enjoy them while they're there. And when they are no longer there, we want to be able to, understand that that's not where our happiness is. That happiness does not come from being with someone or getting something or, any of that. It has to do with an internal state, an inner mental state. So at the time of death, we want to be able to be just okay. And if if we're Buddhists, we want to think about our future life. We want to think things like, may I, keep up the good habits I've developed in this life, about caring for others, about wanting to make, to become enlightened in order to end suffering for myself and others, so that I can continue that work in my next life. We don't want to be all caught up in the fact that, oh, oops, because it's not like we've actually run out of time. It's just this particular body is failing. So we really want to look forward or, keep our minds open to what is next. But now, right now, when we're not on our deathbed, we want to use our time well. We want to let the fact that we know it's impermanent inform every moment, so that we don't spend a lot of time worrying about things that we have no control over or daydreaming about things. We want to use, the time we have well.
Okay, thank you.
So it's really, this is one of the, things, the benefits of looking at these, imagining these things, is to see what bubbles up. So if you're afraid that you won't be able to communicate, then you want to think about, what would I be afraid of communicating, So it's, but the idea here isn't to, it isn't about getting comfortable with, well, it is about getting comfortable with the fact that this body is impermanent. But it's just coming to the acceptance that since death is inevitable, since no one can escape death, then we don't want to ignore it. We want to use that fact to help us choose well from moment to moment. So when we get hooked by something that, and we look and go, oh, there I go again, thinking that it's so important that I have the right dress for this particular event, when we know in the scheme of things, it's really not important. So we can let go of trying to make everything in our lives perfect when that's not possible. And it's not even important. That's just chasing those 8 worldly concerns. Graciela.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. For me, this facing death, it's been is a path. Even a year ago, I had a choice of going to a death retreat workshop and chose not to do it. And I feel good about the progress that's taking place. And I mean, how would it be not to face something that's going to happen anyway, no matter what? And I did want to ask you, you did say that happiness depended on how we think, and then you said a couple other things, and would you mind repeating that?
I'll try. So you said the idea is the more that we take care of our minds, how we think, recognizing when we're holding on to something that's false and correcting our view, letting go of our wrong ideas, like somehow not thinking about death is better than, trying to learn to accept that that's inevitable. We really want to examine our beliefs and understand that, that maybe there's some benefit to thinking in a different way or looking at things from a different angle. Those working on our mind also will be reflected in how we speak to others, what we say to others, what we think is important to express, what we start to think, oh, maybe I don't need to go there. Same thing with our actions of the body. So we want to, we really want to develop our awareness, our self-awareness, self meaning, what's going on in our thinking, what we're getting ready to say or what we just said, and really examine if it matches up with our desire to have a meaningful life, with our desire to be able to benefit others. Or is our speech actually creating the cause for unhappy relationships? Things like that, so but we have to bring wisdom into everything, because this isn't all about just telling people what they want to hear, in our relationships, doing just whatever somebody else wants us to do, because just like ourselves, getting what we want is not the method to be happy. That is true for everybody else as well. So we have to have more wisdom than that. Our desire to benefit others we need that to be grounded in wisdom.
Yes.
Does that help?
Yes, very much so. Thank you very much, Venerable Tendron.
Yeah. Graciela, your hand is still up.
Oh.
Did you want something? Did you have a thought?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you.
No problem. Tali, what do you think?
Sorry.
I was just thinking that I think it's very alienating and lonely to be the sick or the dying person in this culture. That's what I was thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost like they become, I mean, I saw this with my mother, they become a reference point in our minds about how we're different from them. We don't have that issue that they have. We thank God that we don't have that diagnosis, or there but for the grace of God, you know, that sort of thinking. And also it brings up all kinds of fears about our own mortality. So it just strikes me that it's a very alienating thing, that often we don't respond with the kind of compassion that people need. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think that this is one of the ways in which, you know, thinking about our own death can help us benefit others in the time of their death. Because it's because I think that speaks to what you were just saying, speaks to our habit of making it about ourselves.
Right, and I think that seems to be a natural impulse. You know, who hasn't had those thoughts of, thank God that's not me, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that what this teaching is helping us do is to chip away at that barrier that we think is between us and the dying person, when it really isn't there, because we're all headed there. So I don't know. Those are some of the thoughts I was having.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing those.
Thank you.
Because this does arise, this, you know, like you said, it's like instinctive that we naturally do this, you know. It comes from our ignorance, you know, our grasping as self and seeing everyone else as other. And so when someone has an illness that we think, oh, God, that's horrible, I would hate to have that, please don't let that ever happen to me, you know, kind of thing, instead of feeling, you know, which we also have. I mean, it's mixed. We have some compassion. We hate to see someone suffer in that way, and we wish that they weren't suffering in that way, but we avoid them perhaps. We try to act as if separating ourselves will protect us from it, you know. This is from self-grasping. This is from that ignorance that sees ourselves as somehow separate from other, that dualistic thinking that we have from grasping at a self. So instead of, so this is why we also do meditations on recognizing that self and other, or you and me, and us and them, are all just labels that reflect a point of view. They don't actually reflect differences. And we are all in the same boat. And the Buddha says we would, you know, we're creating the cause for happiness when we recognize that we are interconnected, interdependent, that we are in the same boat, and that our happiness depends on the happiness of others. And so being able to be there for someone at the end of their lives without making it all about our own fears, but instead really making it about helping them to be peaceful and happy at the time of their, the end of this body. And that means, you know, if their belief is that they hope they're going to heaven, that you reassure them about all the positive things they've done in this life that will, you know, that's where they'll go, is to heaven. If they can't wait to be reunited with their loved ones who have already died, then you reassure them that they'll see them again soon. if they seem to be clinging to this life because they're afraid of of hurting their loved ones, you know, we let them know that we're going to be okay, that they do a good job taking care of us, all these things. So we make it about them. And that creates a cause for someone to do the same for us. But it also helps us, you know, with this mental process of understanding what really is important and meaningful, as opposed to the big house, the fastest car, the most attractive wardrobe, the, you know, the most attractive body, all of those things that we can get terribly caught up in and waste our time. So the reason why it's natural is because things appear to us to be so concrete and separate. And there really is a me over here and a you over there. And, you know, yes, we may have similarities, you know, but me and mine, I have to protect that because nobody else will. You know, all the stories we create around the importance of self. You know, our beliefs in that it's so important to be independent instead of embracing our interdependence. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. Well, I've talked too long. Okay. So thank you for joining in this evening. Let's do some dedication. Rejoice in your efforts to even, you know, think about these difficult topics. But it's, you know, just because our culture doesn't embrace it doesn't mean that we have to follow along, because there may not be any wisdom in our culture to not, you know, deal with this. Yeah, Faye, did you have a last question?
That's Katrina.
Oh, Katrina?
I just want to say, just because our culture doesn't embrace it, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Right.
You know, it's just, I think that this weird time that we're going through, this new kind of existence, and this is a perfect time for this course, because I keep thinking, well, you know, how can the young people deal with this topic? For me, it just seems so timely. You know, I might live another 20 years, but if I take better care of myself, and but I might die tomorrow, and because of my age, that's easy for me to imagine that I could just, you know, after going to the grocery store, catch this illness and be gone. So, whereas younger people seem to have a better chance. But if I follow the rules and keep listening to you, it's like I'm curious about what's going to come next, and I'm much more constantly preparing, because what comes next will be the next moment of mind, and it's really up to me.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole point of this, is to inspire us, to encourage us to really look at our situation realistically. So, okay, so let's dedicate our efforts.
Tendron, sorry. I wanted, after this meditation, I wanted to make a quick announcement, if that's okay. Like, I wanted to share, there's a virtual concert that a friend is organizing tomorrow, more for people who are like isolated and elderly. And I wanted to just share that with everyone.
Okay, you might type the information into the chat so people have it.
Okay, sure.
Okay, all right. So let's take a moment to rejoice in our efforts. and try to share the benefits of it with others. And this is the dedication Rinpoche is asking us to do. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, all the three-time merits collected by numberless sentient beings and numberless Buddhas, may those who are sick, may they never ever be reborn in the lower realms, and may they immediately recover from their sickness, be able to generate bodhicitta in this very lifetime. May all their wishes to succeed in accordance with the Holy Dharma. For all those who got the virus and died, may they never ever be reborn in the lower realms, and those in the lower realms now immediately get liberated from that and be reborn in a Pure Land where they can achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. So may all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world.